Sports for Real with Coach Hall. Well, today is the day. The NCAA will reveal its tournament bracket for the 2024 basketball tournament for both men and women. This is an exciting time for somebody who loves college basketball, and I've loved it for years. And I always look forward to the day that they started to put the tournament together and show you who's going where, who got in that shouldn't have been in, and those who didn't get in that should have been in. All depends on who you ask, right? Well, today is that day. At 6 o'clock, we're going to find out who got their tickets punched and who's going to be sent packing. I'm interested in to see how the bubble teams have done. Every year, they always talk about this team is on the bubble, that team is on the bubble, and then when you find out that they're actually in the tournament, it's an exciting time, especially if you're one of those teams on the tournament bubble. But what I want to talk about is the bubble teams themselves. You always say that teams are on the bubble. Well, if they're on the bubble, that means if they get in the tournament, they should be a very, very, very low seed, right? Well, oftentimes, if you've been paying attention, some of those schools that are in the Big Ten who are on the bubble, instead of getting a 16 seed, they stick them at 11 or 12 seed. If you are good enough to get an 11 or 12 seed, how is it that you could possibly be on the bubble? Ever thought about that? Well, I have many times. And the reason for that is you have teams, specifically like the HBCUs, they don't, to me, really want them in the tournament, so to appease them, they give the conference champion an automatic bid. And when that team goes into the tournament and they get beaten, they say, see, we didn't really want them there anyway because they got beaten. But the thing is, the HBCUs aren't the only teams that are on the bubble. You have some of those smaller conferences like the Northeast Conference per se, not picking anybody, but they are the Big Ten and the SEC. These conferences don't get the same fairness, if you will, that the bigger schools get. And if you're lucky, if you get one, you're lucky to get that. But the thing is, if these teams from the Big Ten and the Big 12, if they're truly on the bubble, then I think there should be a 16 seed. And if you had these teams being 16 seeds, as great as the NCAA tournament is, it will get exponentially better because now there's no guarantees that you're going to skate through to the second round. If you're a number one seed, you got to play. Lately, that's been the case anyway. You know, with Virginia a couple years ago getting knocked off as a number one seed. But I think the tournament gets more exciting when you put the true bubble teams in those 15, 16 slots to play against those higher seeds. They won't care anything about playing against those teams because they'll just be glad to be there. So just imagine if this was the case. But of course, that's not going to be what happens. They're going to continue to put the smaller conferences in there, and that's after some of them play in that first four. You know, they don't have 64 teams anymore. They have 68. So that gives you more opportunity to bring more big schools into the tournament. So when you play these small schools, they fight against each other just to get in the tournament. You know, it just gives them another breather for those that supposedly have been on the bubble. But it's always been that way, and I don't see it changing. But one thing's for sure, if they put those bubble teams and made them 15, 16 seeds, then the tournament gets really good. As good as it is, but if you really want to see excitement and no guarantees, allow those bubble teams to go down to 15 and 16 seeds. But despite that, keep an eye on the bubble teams and see where they're going to be seated this year. You know, every year I always talk about the first four in, the last four in, or the last four out. People make a living off coming up with these examples. But trust me, those teams that are on the bubble, they're going to end up with some high seeds. And you're going to be sitting there wondering like me, how? But that's just my thought on the NCAA tournament. I'll be watching the selection show just to see who goes where. But in the end, we're still only talking about 5 or 6 teams that could actually win the whole thing. Very rarely do you have a program that's going to upset their way all the way through the tournament and win the whole thing. And we didn't see it coming. Just not the case. So keep an eye on that today. Sports for Real.